Try it yourself, and if you get stuck, come to office hours or post in Piazza. Is that okay? So what we're going to do today is we're all going to use my Amazon credentials and pull from the same database. So we're going to skip through all this. And we'll go directly to working on an exercise. So I have this repo here for you guys to all pull. And go to that link and go into your 6148 folder or find another place that's convenient for you and go ahead and clone this folder. So what we're working on today is we're going to be making a little photo album that allows us to upload photos onto it and see it show up. Should be pretty fun. So once you're done cloning that repo, why don't you look up and we'll continue. So if you have any issues, raise your hands and staff will come around and help you. Once you're there, go ahead and open up js/gallery.js. Oh, does anyone still need a link? So just a quick few notes about today's workshop. You guys can keep cloning. I've done most of the code for you, so all the gallery display and stuff has been written. What we're mostly going to be working on is one file that's going to deal with pulling Amazon images off and being able to upload images. So we're going to implement that function today. Okay. But first, we're going to go through the entire code base to make sure you guys understand everything. Seems like people are mostly there. Can you raise your hand if you're there and ready to move on? Okay, cool. So first, one thing we're going to do is we're going to look through our code base, make sure you guys understand it, just in case you need to use this application in your own website. So if we open up js/gallery.js, what this file basically deals with is displaying our photos. I'm using an external library called Masonry to make your photos look pretty. Don't worry about it. It just makes it responsive and has nice borders and stuff. But that's what Refresh Grid does. What it does is it takes our grid and makes it into a Masonry grid, so it'll make the photos pretty. And finally down here, this one is a little more important. This function is called add all photos, and what it does is it takes the div that contains all of our, that's going to contain all our photos. Currently it's empty, and then for every single photo inside data, it's basically just going to turn that into a source inside a div and display that photo. Make sense to everybody? So we're basically iterating through all the photos that we pass in through this data parameter, and we render all of them inside this template. And once we actually are able to render them, you can see them show up. Are there any questions so far? Cool. Okay. And next we're going to open up index.html. So as you guys are all probably familiar with HTML by now, but this is where all of our stuff is going to sit. So it's in this photo grid. We're going to pull down our images from Amazon, and then through that add all images function, we're going to add all of our images in here one by one. And other than that, it's just classic HTML. We have our title, and then this chunk right here is just our upload widget. So it's very simply a button that allows you to upload a photo, and then that photo is read into another function, which we'll see in a second. Cool. And then finally, open up js/photo.js. Now, this file is where you guys are going to be doing most of your work, or all of your work in this case. It's going to deal with pulling stuff down from Amazon and passing it to the correct methods to display it. Okay? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to deal with our AWS configuration. Now, how AWS works is it needs certain config variables so that you know which S3 instance you're accessing, of course. You don't pull someone's images from someone else's bucket. So in our case, our bucket name is called alex-chen-cool-photos. Now, what's important is that your bucket name has to be unique. So try to pick a bucket name that is relevant to your app or your name so that it doesn't conflict with anyone else. The second parameter is our AWS region. So around the United States, around the world, there are various Amazon Web Service regions. Now, you can pick any one that you want, but I think the closest one to us is US East 1. So that'll give you the best kind of performance. And finally, our last parameter is identity pool ID, which basically is a key that allows us access into our bucket. So if you don't have this key, you can't access our bucket programmatically, so it's important that you have it as well. Make sense, everybody? Cool. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our AWS object and we're going to update it with the correct configurations. And finally, we create a new S3 instance from our AWS object. Now, S3, as we said earlier, is just Amazon storage service. And you might notice that we have this thing called a bucket name. So what is an S3 bucket? Well, it turns out that S3 buckets are kind of just like real-life buckets. They're just kind of buckets just sitting in space, right? And we can throw whatever we want in it, and Amazon will gladly take it and stick it in your bucket. And whenever you want it, you're like, hey, Amazon, I want my thing out of my bucket, and they'll give it back to you. So to kind of illustrate this, identity pool is, you can look it up there. We're not going to cover it in this lecture, but it gives you access to your bucket. So bucket is this thing sitting in space, and we can throw whatever we want at it. So in this case, maybe we'll decide to throw some of our staff into our bucket here. And say our staff, our bucket is named cool staff, right? So then if we wanted to access this beautiful image of Joanne, we would basically just input this URL. Notice at the beginning is this S3, that's the header for all S3 buckets. And then cool staff is our bucket name, followed by the file name, which is joanne.jpg. So if you ever put anything in your bucket, your general URL will just be this. Your bucket name followed by your file name. So that's how you access it. Okay? Cool. So let's go back to the code from that fast aside on buckets. Our first task here is to implement view album. Now you guys might find it in your JS/photo.js. It's not completely implemented yet. And here in 6.1.4.8, one of our jobs is to make sure that you guys are able to kind of develop web code on your own. So today what we're going to try to do is I'm going to give you this documentation for exactly what list object does, right? And using that, you should be able to implement view album, right? So this documentation should give you what kinds of configurations you need to put inside this particular function to call it in such a way that you can view our album and then finally call add all photos at the end of the function to take us to adding all the photos to our HTML. Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm going to give you guys like 5 to 7-ish minutes to work on that, and then we'll go back and go over it together. All right? Raise your hand if you need help, and staff will come around and give assistance. Everybody found the documentation okay? right, does everybody have some kind of start on your function somewhat? Yeah, somewhat? It's okay. So reading documentation is pretty hard, especially if you're not as familiar with JavaScript. So we're going to go through it together. Let's see. Okay, so inside our view album function, we obviously need to call s3.listObjects, just like they did inside the documentation. So did people get somewhat this far? Something that looks similar to this, at least. Cool. Nice. That's what I like to hear. Great. So what does this kind of represent? Well, s3.listObjects takes a few parameters, right? So it's going to take this param. One thing to worry about is the callback, right? So this callback function is going to say, okay, we're going to take two parameters, an error, and also the data that we get back. So the data that we get back is in the form of all the files that are stored inside our S3 instance, right? The error is going to manifest itself in any kinds of things that went wrong along the way. Maybe your internet broke or something like that. Make sense? So what are we going to do with that data? Well, how we do with error is, well, if there's an error, then we should be sad and return an alert and say, okay, there was some kind of error. Or you can maybe console.log something. But you want to have some kind of catcher to say, like, okay, if there's an error, then we got to be careful. Otherwise, I'm casing my cursor here. What we want is, first of all, we need to initialize our bucket URL, right? So if you look at the top of your photo.js, we have album bucket name. It's initialized to Alex trying to pull photos, something like that, right? And as we covered earlier, the URL looks like this, plus the bucket name, right? So we're going to pass that in to add all photos, just like we saw earlier. And also, we're just going to pass in our list of data and have it render our images for us. Make sense? So why don't you guys try putting that in? And once you're done with that, go ahead and open index.html in Chrome, and we should be able to see our results. Let's see if I can also open up index.html. Some wonderful photos of staff here. Did you raise your hand if you're here? Okay, not quite. Wait a little bit.
Alex, question?
Yes, hi.
Could you just talk about what you're doing to make photos or that?
Yes, great question. So all that magic is actually happening in gallery.js. So one of the great things about JavaScript is we have a lot of external libraries. This particular one is called Masonry. So what is awesome is that we don't actually care about what's happening in the backend on that library. All we know is that we need to call this tiny snippet of code, which was somewhere over here. Yeah, so this tiny chunk of code does everything we want to do when it comes to rearranging. So we let Masonry handle all of that for us, and then the images will just rearrange themselves. Does that kind of make sense? So one great thing is we can actually just look up different libraries or external things that we can use to make our app look a little better. The code for, oh yeah, of course. So this is pretty cool, right? We're actually able to display images that are not inside of our /public directory, right? So that means that these images, you can actually upload from anywhere else and then just pop up on your website, which is really useful if you have, for example, a lot of images, or maybe you want to be able to upload images dynamically or anything like that. And we never have to redeploy when we're actually uploading these images. So your website can be running, and we can just upload images to AWS, and they'll automatically show up on your website. So you guys like a few more? Yes? Right, great question. Because we already configured our S3 to point to the bucket name in the earlier params, right? Yeah, so it automatically already knows that which bucket we want to go to. Now, we can actually pass in some params in the little curly braces for more specific things. Right now, we're just taking everything from our S3 bucket, so we don't need to worry about that. Make sense? Are there any questions? I know that S3 can be kind of confusing.
I have one.
Yes.
I can understand all of the data has you all has this object and that function is only a call.
Yes.
Where does it fit?
Yeah, great question. So how S3 list objects works is it takes two parameters, right? It takes this first one, which we left empty because we want all of the objects inside our bucket, and it also takes a callback function. And this callback function is specified to take these two parameters, right? And then S3 will automatically populate the data with the data it gets back from our bucket. So it's going to call this function with the data that it gets back from our S3 bucket. Are there any other questions? These are all really good, by the way. Cool. Does everybody have a gallery working? Yeah? You can see funny photos of Slava? Alright, good. Cool. So now our next task is we're going to try to be able to upload our own funny images of Slava. So we're going to implement add photo. Now this one can be a little bit more complicated, so why don't you turn to someone next to you and work together as a pair. I have the documentation up here that allows you to use s3.upload, which is what you're going to use for this particular point. Now you might notice that inside photo.js I already have some of that function implemented for you, and that's because that's all the stuff that's pulling down the particular file from the HTML. So you can fill your upload function with our file that is already implemented inside photo.js. Okay? So why don't you turn to someone next to you and give it a try. Yes? Oh no, this, oh yeah guys, this is not a server. So this entire application is run entirely from the front end. So you don't actually need a server to call any AWS photos. So just open index.html. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Okay. Did you guys finish early? Try to find that funny picture and upload it. Right.
So what do you do about that?
Sorry?
What do we do about bucket?
Yeah, so we'll get that in a second. So bucket name is actually configured in the beginning on that very top file. There's like an interface bit, right? So
Okay, so we have this idea of since the bucket is also here, so the bucket URL will point to the
exact bucket that you want. Remember the URL that we decided to use?
My question is, when you're doing all objects from S3, why don't you have a
because we have this idea that points us to ours. So this pool ID points us to that particular bucket. So it's a configuration set in AWS console. So that key will point towards our bucket. So yeah, it's like a copy paste. Okay.
You should have been documenting.
Alright guys, let's go over let's go over what we've done here. Okay, so here we go. So alright, I know it's a lot. We'll go over it one by one, promise. Okay, so this stuff at the top is what we had before, right? So this, what it does, it just gets a photo out of our interface, right? So we click add photo and then click submit, and this will pull all that data down. Alright? Now, so what do we have here? Well, so the file actually returns a list, so we have this thing, and then our photo key is just the name of the photo, right? So when we access our AWS bucket, remember we have our s3.aws.aws.com /bucket name, then / the photo, right? So the photo key is just the photo name. Does that make sense to everybody? That's all so far? Cool. Okay, so then we're just gonna upload our photo up here. And it's important that you're able to public read it. Because if the public can't read it, then when people log onto your website, people won't be able to see your photos, right? So we're kind of using S3 here as kind of like Imgur. You guys ever used Imgur, right? Except we're able to redirect it directly to our website. So we're able to link these images directly and anyone can read them, right? Cool, and then we just say upload, and then we upload our image, right? Are there any questions on this one? Yes?
What will upload?
Yeah, great question. So if you upload two pictures with the same name, what Amazon actually does is it replaces the photo that, the later photo. Like, it replaces the earlier one with the later one. And if they're the same image, then obviously nothing happens, right? Yeah, so there won't be any duplicates. Well, that's a great question. Anything else? Yes?
Do you not need to pass in your bucket name as like a param?
Yeah, great question. So how bucket works is that if you look at the top of your flow.js, you can see that there's like this key that we put in. It's something east US East 1 : bunch of random stuff, right? Okay, so that key is, if you look in the earlier slides that we didn't go over today, is something you have to configure inside your AWS configuration on your dashboard. And that key is unique to you, and that allows you to access your specific bucket. So if you input that key, S3 knows that that's the bucket we want to access. It's called a pool ID. Okay, so it's a few clicks to set up on AWS, and you need one in order to access your Amazon resource. Right? So it kind of, you can think of it as kind of a password, right? So it'll say, okay, this is the key that belongs to Alex's account, right? And so once we access Alex's account, we need to use this particular key to access that bucket. Does that kind of make sense? This is just so some rando can't just programmatically fill your bucket with, you know, pictures of, I don't know, Rick Astley or something. So they need a key in order to do things to your bucket. Yeah? Cool. Any other questions? It's a great question. Awesome. Okay. So why don't you guys try filling this code? And once you're done, give it a run and see if you can upload your own images to the website. And what's great is that since this bucket is shared among all of us, that means that if you upload an image, everyone should be able to see it. Right? So realize that we're now in a decentralized kind of AWS world, right? Before, if you have an image in your website, right, if you upload an image, then it shows up on your website, right? Now, but anyone can upload an image onto your website. So this can be useful for your app if, for example, you want to make something that allows you to track Slava wherever you want, right? You upload pictures of Slava. So anyone can upload a picture of Slava and put it on your app, right? So it's really important that this is an ability for apps that really need users to upload images, or you have a lot of images. Otherwise, you could just use like a public directory and put in your own. Make sense? Okay, so why don't we give that a try, and let's see what we can do. Did everybody get the code kind of working? No, I'm happy to help you guys after class and yeah. Adam? Okay. Oh yeah. So at the very end, after you upload, we've added just this last call to view album. So what that does is it allows us to say, okay, once we've uploaded our image, we need to review the album. Because view album adds all the photos onto our HTML, right? But once you upload a new image, our HTML doesn't really know about it yet. So we need to kind of like almost refresh the page in order for that to work, right? And this console.log is just to give us a sanity check that we got here. Right? Otherwise, we're gonna throw an error and say, okay, there was some kind of error uploading your photo. Cool, great job, guys. Okay, does anyone have any questions about what we've covered today? So just a quick recap. We use Amazon Web Services, in particular S3, to be able to upload images onto AWS so they can pull them down onto our website dynamically. And users can also upload their own images to the website and pull them down as well. Cool. Any questions? You good? Yes?
What are the benefits from using AWS versus just storing the pictures in a database?
Yeah, great question. So, for example, MongoDB does allow you to like store images into their database. We have to convert it into like a funky BSON format, and then shove it in, and then shove it out. It's just really, it's difficult. And the reason that is because when you store an image into a database, you actually have to store all like the bits, right? All the ones and zeros that represent this entire image needs to go in that database, right? Meanwhile, if you're using AWS, all you have to do is put in a link, right? And then your website can just go to that link and get the image that's hosted on somewhere else. Make sense? So it's a lot less overhead per se, right? Does that answer your question? Yes? Yes. Yes, you can. So the path, well, it depends if you mean like online or like on your. Right, exactly. So that's the problem, right? You have to upload every single image onto your like project, right? And then push that entire like piece of junk, right? I mean, like yeah, say you have like 2,000 images, right? Now your project's like this big, and you're like, oh, I gotta push it into like Heroku and like jam it in there. It's a lot easier if you're able to just host it somewhere else, right? Say here, Amazon, you deal with that junk, and I'll just link it, right? So that's why it's useful.
Also, your MLab instance probably doesn't even have space to host enough of the images. Like, if you're gonna have more than a decent number of images, the space that MLab will give you for free can't host that many.
Right. It's also kind of a headache. I've tried to host images on MLab before. It's like not that fun. AWS is a pain sometimes, but I think it's less of a pain. Yes?
How much space do you get for free on Amazon?
Amazon S3.